Hi, I'm Barbara. At 9:27 a.m., I got a call that didn't just wake me up. It broke something inside me. My mother had been found outside a gas station during a snowstorm. She had no coat, no shoes, only bruises. The people who left her there were my brother and his wife. But that wasn't the worst part. What hurt the most was knowing it wasn't the first time they had hurt her. It was just the first time she couldn't hide it anymore. So I drove 500 miles through the snow, heading straight toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. What do you do when the people who raised you are the ones you have to protect each other from? The snow had been falling for hours. At first it was soft, then it turned heavy, hitting the windows like an impatient animal. My apartment in Bozeman was unusually quiet. I had chamomile tea cooling beside my laptop, a muted true crime show playing in the background, and folders of legal papers spread across the kitchen table. It was a normal Friday night. I was halfway through an email when my phone lit up. 5 missed calls from unknown numbers. I thought it was spam, or maybe someone from work needing something last minute. I was about to put the phone down when it rang again, lighting up the dark room. "Barbara Hamilton?" a calm male voice asked. "Yes. This is Officer Brandon with the Buffalo Police Department. Are you related to a Linda Hamilton?" My breath caught. It wasn't just the name, it was the careful way he said it, like I might break if he got it wrong. "I'm her daughter." "There's a woman who matches her description," he said. "She was found outside a Speedway gas station about an hour ago. She had on only house slippers, no ID, no coat, and she seemed confused. She's okay, just cold, but she refused to go to the hospital. She said someone named Barbara would know what to do." I blinked, trying to picture my mother, the same woman who once told me I was a disappointment, shivering outside in a Montana blizzard. "I'm 500 miles away," I whispered, then louder. "Tell her I'm coming." It had been 8 years since I left Buffalo. 8 years since I last stood in the same room as my mother. She never called, never wrote, never asked about me after I took a job in the city. She was the kind of mother who remembered birthdays when it made her look good, and forgot them when she was angry. But that call broke something inside me. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't even change my shoes. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and the first aid kit from under the sink and walked out the door. The roads were already icy. I slid twice in the first 10 blocks, but kept going. My wipers fought the snow, smearing more than they cleared. I gripped the wheel tightly, staring at the headlights cutting through the storm. The silence in the car was loud. No music, no radio, only my thoughts rushing in like trains. The last time I saw Linda, we were fighting in the kitchen. I had just gotten a full scholarship to a law program in another state. She said I was abandoning her. She told me, "Don't come back if you think you're better than this family." And I didn't. But tonight, I could still hear her voice, not sharp and angry, but panicked and unsure. I imagined her, not as the woman who once slapped a glass out of my hand, but as someone's frightened mother lost in a snowstorm. The miles passed slowly, each one dangerous. Gas stations were closed. Headlights were rare. I drove through towns I hadn't thought about in years, their shapes barely visible behind the falling snow. I reached the "Welcome to Buffalo" sign around 3:55 a.m. My hands were stiff from gripping the wheel. My breath fogged the windshield. I turned slowly into the Speedway parking lot, tires crunching over the frozen snow. Then I saw her. She was curled up against the side of the building between a dumpster and a half-frozen soda machine. Her slippers were soaked. Her hands were bare. She wore an old robe over a stained nightgown. Her hair was messy, her lips cracked like she hadn't had water in days. I braked so hard I almost slid into a snowbank. I left the car door open and ran toward her. "Mom," I said. I hadn't called her that in years. She didn't react at first. Her eyes were glassy, blinking slowly. Then, a small spark of recognition appeared. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "I'm fine. Just slipped. That's all." My throat tightened. A dark bruise was forming along her cheekbone, spreading like ink under her pale skin. "Come on," I said, trying to help her up. "Let's get you warm." She flinched when I touched her arm, her body going stiff like she expected a hit instead of help. A police car sat nearby, engine running. The same officer who had called me stepped out and gave me a quiet nod. She wouldn't let us touch her, he said softly, handing me a fleece blanket. Said someone would come. I wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. She resisted for a moment, maybe from pride, maybe from stubbornness. Then she leaned into me just slightly. I helped her into my car, turned on the heat, and aimed the vents at her face. For a while, we sat there in silence. Snow fell outside like confetti, making everything look calm when it wasn't.
She didn't speak.
I didn't either. I gave her a bottle of water from the console. She sipped it slowly, like she hadn't had anything in days. The officer leaned down at the passenger window. She said some things he told me. Not sure how much is true. Mentioned his son. Said he hit her. Threw her out. You might want to check. My stomach turned to ice. Justin? I asked. The officer gave a small nod, like he wasn't sure if he should say more. She also said she might have imagined it, he went on. But she said she didn't want to die outside, that maybe someone would remember her. I looked at my mother. She was staring straight ahead, lips trembling, eyes wet. I reached over and took her hand. I remember you, I whispered. The officer's words stayed in the air between us, heavy. Snow swirled around him, catching on the brim of his hat and melting into his coat. His posture shifted, like he knew more than he could say. I gave him one slow nod. Thanks for letting me know. The drive to the motel was quiet. The roads were still slick, but the plows had started clearing them. I knew the place I was heading to, the only cheap spot still open in this part of town. It was the kind of place where the heat only worked half the time, and the carpet smelled like someone tried to hide mold with pine-scented cleaner. I checked us in without saying more than I had to. I slid my license across the counter with a look that said, "Don't ask." The clerk didn't. Linda shuffled in behind me, still wrapped in the blanket the officer had given her. She hadn't spoken once since we left the gas station. When we got to the room, she went straight to the edge of the bed and sat down, like she was waiting for permission to breathe. I brought her a styrofoam cup of hot soup from the vending area. She stared at it like it was something dangerous. I didn't push her. I knew that look. It was the same one I used to give the school nurse when she asked if someone at home had hurt me. Back then, I would say no, smile too big, and pretend everything was fine. I had learned the language of pretending a long time ago. She didn't touch the soup. She looked at the wall, then the lamp, then the floor, anywhere but me. I took the first aid kit from my coat pocket and knelt beside her. Her fingers were dry and cracked, with small cuts near her knuckles. Her wrist was sore when I touched it. Look sprained, I said quietly, mostly to myself. She flinched as I wrapped it. I didn't fall, she said softly, still staring at the wall. I didn't answer. She glanced at me, for just a second. Why did you come? I stood. Because you didn't deserve to freeze in a parking lot, no matter what's happened. There was a long silence. Then, so faint I almost didn't hear it, she said, "Don't let him take it all." I turned sharply.
What?
But her eyes were closed again, her breathing slow, like she hadn't said a word. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the other bed, staring at the cheap blinds moving in the heat from the wall unit. Her phone buzzed once. It was an old flip phone she'd had since I was in college. 1 bar of battery, 1 voicemail. I hesitated, then pressed play. It was Justin. "You're embarrassing me, Ma. Keep this up, and I'll make sure nobody finds you." My throat tightened. The voice wasn't angry, it was worse.
Calm. Cold.
Like he was giving instructions to a plumber. I gripped the phone so hard it creaked in my hand. I had spent years building a life where that voice couldn't reach me. But now it was here, slipping back into my world like ice through a crack. I remembered being 17, locked in the downstairs bathroom, pressing a towel to my nose while blood soaked through it. Linda was on the other side of the door saying, "You always push him. He has more pressure than you. You should know better." She had protected him, even from me. The pain wasn't just old, it was buried deep, like a fossil. Hearing it again didn't reopen the wound. It reminded me it had never healed. I stepped outside the motel room and let the cold hit my skin like a slap. I didn't scream. I couldn't, but my body shook. Rage and clarity mixed in me like oil and water. I had come here to help her, but now I knew I had to protect her from him. When I went back inside, Linda was awake, her eyes following me.
I didn't waste time.
Did he hit you? She blinked. He didn't mean to. I shouldn't have spoken out. Spoken out about what? She hesitated, lips pressed tight. The house, she said finally. The accounts. I shouldn't have signed. I sat down across from her. What did you sign? Everything. I gave him access to the house, the bank. He said he'd help me with the bills. Said I couldn't handle it anymore. And you believed him? I was tired. When your father passed, Justin stepped up. I thought, her voice cracked. I thought he'd take care of me. And now you're sleeping next to a dumpster. I said too sharply. She flinched. Don't talk to me like that. Then don't lie to me like I'm still 15. We sat in silence for a full minute. Then she whispered, You always wanted to leave. I thought you were gone for good. I said, until your name came up on a police report. I couldn't sit still anymore. I grabbed the keys, went to the car, and sat inside. The steering wheel was ice cold. My breath fogged the window. I closed my eyes and let the memories come. Justin throwing a birthday party I wasn't invited to, Mom framing his high school award while mine sat in a drawer. The day I left for college and Linda didn't even walk me to the door. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about all the years I had spent trying to prove I deserved a place in my own family. And now it was falling apart because she finally saw what I had always known. I hadn't come here for revenge, but I wasn't leaving without the truth. It was just past noon when I pulled into Justin's driveway. The snow had stopped, but the wind still had a sharp bite that cut through my coat sleeves. I sat in the car longer than I needed to, staring at the house I used to call home.
It hadn't changed.
The house looked the same from the outside, beige vinyl siding, the same crack in the front step Dad never fixed. From the street, it seemed solid, safe, like the kind of place where everything made sense. But I knew better. Justin had agreed, reluctantly, to let me come by and pick up some of Linda's things. I told him I'd be quick.
He didn't sound happy.
Then again, did he ever? Still, he didn't argue. Maybe he figured letting me walk through for 10 minutes was easier than drawing more attention to the mess he'd made. I knocked out of habit, then pushed the door open. It creaked just like always. The smell hit me right away, pine cleaner mixed with whatever Jennifer had been cooking. Some kind of sauce with far too much garlic. I stepped inside, wiping my boots on the mat that still read, Home is where the heart is. Both of us knew that wasn't true. The hallway stretched in front of me, and that's when I saw them, the photos. Dozens of framed pictures lined the wall. Justin as a toddler, grinning with cake smeared across his cheeks. Justin in his football uniform. Justin and Jennifer on their wedding day, smiling with their perfectly styled hair. Their daughter Karen at every stage, preschool graduation, ballet recital, first day of middle school. Even a framed photo of Jennifer at her college graduation, wearing a sash like she had discovered something no one else ever had. I walked slowly, scanning each frame, each piece of their carefully chosen life. Then I found it, or rather, what was left of it. It was an old family photo from 1995. I remembered that day. It was taken outside the church after Easter service. I wore a pale blue dress Mom said made me look washed out. Everyone else wore soft pastel colors. We looked like a picture from a catalog. But in this version, the photo had been cut. My side was gone. My shoulder, my smile, the tilt of my head, erased, like I'd never been there. Linda once told me the photo was too big for the wall. I used to think she meant the frame. Now I knew better. I stepped back slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. I tried to stay calm, to act like it wasn't a slap in the face, but it was. Every photo was proof that I'd been erased, one memory at a time. Then came the voice I hadn't missed. Didn't expect you to come back, Jennifer said behind me. We managed just fine. I turned to face her. She was wearing a silk robe and holding a coffee mug like she owned the place. Maybe she thought she did. I'm not here to chat, I said. Clearly, she replied, raising an eyebrow. Your tone hasn't softened with time. You kicked her out in a snowstorm, I said, keeping my voice steady. That's not something people forget. Jennifer rolled her eyes. You really don't know half the story, Barbara. Then tell me, I said. Tell me what she did to deserve the sidewalk. She sipped her coffee, letting the silence hang. She's been unstable for a while. Paranoid. Confused. Accusing Justin of things you and I both know he'd never do. I stared at her. Like what? She claimed he stole from her, Jennifer said flatly. Said he tricked her into signing over the house. Can you believe that? After everything he's done for her. She signed over the house? I asked, my stomach tightening. Oh, please, Jennifer scoffed. It's not like she was using it properly. The place was falling apart, and Justin kept saving her. She doesn't even remember paying her utility bills. I stepped closer. And so what? You decided to throw her out into a snowbank until she stopped being a problem? She tilted her head. You really think this is your moment, don't you? You swoop back into town and play the hero. But you weren't here. You don't get to judge what we've had to deal with. You're right, I said. I wasn't here. But I'm here now. She didn't answer. She just turned and walked back into the kitchen like the conversation was done. Maybe it was for her. I turned away from the photo wall and walked down the hall to the closet by the stairs. I remembered Carolyn used to keep old photo albums in there, scrapbooks, boxes labeled by year, filled with ticket stubs, birthday cards, and receipts from trips we never took again. The closet was crammed with plastic bins and Christmas decorations. I dug through them one by one, pulling lids and shifting boxes. Then I saw it, a dusty cardboard box with 1995 Barbara written in black marker across the top. I pulled it into the hallway and opened the flaps. Inside was my high school diploma, still in its envelope. A birthday card with no name, just the words, "Proud of you," in slanted handwriting. And a college acceptance letter torn in half, and then taped back together. I sat on the floor, legs folded under me. My hands shook, but I didn't cry. I wasn't 17 anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to tell me I mattered. I took out my phone and started snapping pictures. Each item, one by one. This wasn't about memories, it was proof. Evidence, not nostalgia. Mrs. Thomas's words stayed with me like damp air I couldn't shake. She had said she saw blood, her voice careful and uneasy, like someone who had witnessed something wrong but couldn't fully name it. The kitchen looked the same as always, pale yellow cabinets with chipped paint, the old light fixture that buzzed faintly when it warmed up. The only new thing was a neat row of expensive spice jars above the stove. Definitely Jennifer's touch. Everything in the house felt familiar, but none of it felt like home. I took a slow breath and stepped out the back door, crossing the snowy yard that separated our property from Mrs. Thomas's. The snow crunched under my boots, the path slick and uneven. The sky had turned that dull gray that made it feel like the day was stuck between afternoon and night. I knocked twice on her screen door. A few seconds later, I heard the soft shuffle of slippers on linoleum. When she opened the door, her eyes widened just a little. Barbara. Hi, Mrs. Thomas, I said. Sorry to drop by without calling first. Her gaze softened. You've grown into your face, she said. You look like your daddy. Serious.
Quiet. Come in.
I've got hot water on. Inside, the house smelled like lemon balm and old paper. I sat at her small kitchen table while she poured 2 cups of tea, her hands trembling slightly.
I didn't waste time.
You told me you saw my mother that night, outside, bleeding. She nodded, pressing her lips together. It was after 9. I had just turned off the TV when I heard shouting next door. It wasn't the first time, but this time felt different. I went to the window, and that's when I saw her. I waited. She was stumbling, like her legs weren't steady, wearing that old robe. And there was red on her hand on her cheek. She looked scared. Did you see who was with her? I asked. She shook her head. No, but someone slammed the door behind her. Hard. I set my tea down. Did you report it? I should have, she said quietly, her voice dropping. But it's your brother, and your mother's always been proud. She didn't want anyone interfering. I nodded. Thank you for telling me. As I left, she called after me. Be careful, Barbara. There's history in that house, and not all of it is old. I crossed the yard and stepped back into the kitchen, scanning the room more carefully this time. A plate rack hung over the counter. A drawer was slightly open. Linda's words echoed in my mind. The house, the accounts. Something had happened here. Not just physically, but something deeper. Some shift in control. Some fight that had broken through the surface of their fake peace. I opened the junk drawer and found a receipt pushed behind an old takeout menu. It was from a law office, dated 3 months ago. The note read, "Property transfer, final signatures." Justin now owned the house. Linda's name was gone. Outside, I walked to the side gate. As I reached to unlatch it, I heard footsteps behind me. "You're digging," Jennifer said, her voice flat. I turned and saw her near the garage, arms crossed, looking like she had been waiting for this moment. "That's what you do when something's been buried," I said. Her mouth twitched. "You think you're clever?" "I think I'm done being silent." She stepped closer. "You really believe you can undo this? That anyone's going to take you seriously? You left this family." "I didn't run," I said calmly. "I survived." She looked me over, her eyes narrowing. "You're not just meddling. You're trying to tear down everything we built." "No," I said. "You built it on someone else's pain. That house was never yours. That name was never only Justin's." She laughed once, short and sharp. "Sweetheart, if you were smarter, you'd be married with power, not digging through trash for attention." I didn't move. Power doesn't erase proof. And I'm good at finding proof. Her glare hardened. "You'll regret this." I already regret not coming back sooner. I left her standing there, the wind pulling at her silk scarf, and went back to the motel. Linda was asleep, curled tightly on the far side of the bed. I sat at the small desk, opened my laptop, and started organizing everything: receipts, the voicemail, Mrs. Thomas's notes, photos of the box labeled 1995 Barbara. Each piece went into its own folder. I wrote a short email to Justin's office. Subject: Linda has memory issues, but I don't. Body: let's meet. No signature. The next morning, Linda stirred as I poured her coffee. Her voice was rough. "I heard your father once say, a drawer only breaks when it's opened too hard." I sat beside her. "What does that mean?" She kept her eyes down. "He pushed the drawer too hard. That night, I told him I was going to tell you everything. It scared him." My chest tightened. "There was more?" She nodded slowly. "He said I'd ruin everything. That I'd make you turn on the family. That you'd use it against him." "And were you going to tell me?" She looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear, not of Justin but of me. I didn't want to lose both my children. I swallowed. "You never had both. You just chose one." She didn't argue. That night, after she fell asleep, I searched the living room again, looking for anything that could tell me more. Behind a decorative vase, I found a small baby monitor. I checked the back. It had a micro SD card. I pocketed it. At a local drugstore, I bought a card reader and plugged it into my laptop. There were 10 video files. The newest one was from the night she was thrown out. I clicked play. I didn't sleep. Time felt heavy, almost frozen, as I stared at the screen, my breath caught between disbelief and disgust. The footage was grainy, the lens slightly crooked. There was no clear sound, no dramatic angle, but it showed enough. The timestamp in the corner read 7:35 p.m. Linda stood by the kitchen counter, looking small, like she didn't belong there. Justin's voice came through first, louder than I remembered, yelling about bills, responsibilities, and her not being grateful. She said something about her account, about needing to check the withdrawals. Then, without warning, he moved toward her. The motion wasn't wild, it was practiced. A backhand across the cheek. She stumbled into the counter, her head hitting the edge with a sick crack. Plates fell from the drying rack and crashed to the floor. She collapsed onto the tile. Seconds later, Jennifer walked into the frame, phone in hand. She glanced at Linda lying there, then kept walking. I watched the video again.
And again.
By the third time, My hand was shaking so badly, I had to steady it against the table. This wasn't an argument. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was abuse caught on video with a timestamp, and no one had done a thing. I uploaded the file to a secure cloud folder and labeled it simply, Mom0148 Evidence. No extra words, no emotion, just the truth. Outside, the wind still howled, but the snow was slowing. In the motel room, I could hear Linda moving in her sleep. I stared at the still frame on my laptop, her body curled on the floor, one hand under her ribs, and hated myself for not coming back sooner. Morning came gray and heavy. I waited until she woke before sliding the laptop toward her. I paused the video right before the moment of impact. She blinked at the screen. "What's that?" "Something you need to see." She leaned forward. When she realized what it was, she flinched, like her body remembered before her mind could. "I don't," she began. "Don't say you don't remember," I said. "I know you do." Her lips moved, but no sound came. "You told me he didn't mean it," I continued. "You made excuses. But this is what happened. And she walked right past you like you were nothing." Linda's voice finally came.
He's not a bad person.
"He's just overwhelmed." I pushed my chair back. "You've been saying that for 21 years. When he broke my nose in 7th grade, you said it then. When he locked me outside all night barefoot in winter, you told me I must have provoked him." She looked away. "Tell me something," I said quietly. "Did you ever believe me, even once?" Her jaw tightened. "You were always so loud, Barbara. So needy." I let out a short, bitter laugh. Maybe I was just there, and that was too much. I didn't wait for her to respond. I went back to the table and drafted an email. No subject line. Just a still image from the footage. Linda caught in mid-fall, the tile floor only inches from her head. That was the still image I sent to Justin's work email. No message. No explanation. Just the truth. It took less than 30 minutes for Jennifer to call. "What are you trying to do?" she hissed into the phone. "You want to ruin everything? You think a grainy video is going to change anything?" I let the silence sit for a moment, then said evenly, "I haven't even started." And I hung up. I leaned back in the chair, listening to the radiator hiss against the cold. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about making them suffer. It was about cutting off their access to her, to what they'd taken, to what they still believed was theirs. I opened a legal template and began typing. Elder abuse, financial coercion, physical assault. I filled in names, dates, locations, and attached the evidence. I had everything I needed. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't used in years. Christine Taylor, a nurse I used to work with who now did social work for the county. When she answered, her voice warmed with familiarity. "Barbara, is everything okay?" "No," I said. "But I think I finally know what to do." We talked for 20 minutes. I told her everything, not just what happened that night, but the pattern, the years of silence, the fake innocence they put on for others, the property transfer, the medical records, the video. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she spoke quietly. "I can file for an emergency evaluation. That will trigger a home visit. If the findings hold up, it goes to court." "Do it," I said. "Today. I'll need a statement. I'll send it within the hour." By that evening, I had done more paperwork than in the last 3 months combined. My hands ached, but my mind felt sharp. Linda stayed quiet most of the day, staring out the window like she was waiting for a storm. "You're doing all this for someone who never believed you," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm doing it for someone who deserves to finally believe herself." We didn't talk after that. I went to bed just after midnight. The room was dark, the heater humming a slow rhythm. Sometime before dawn, I woke to the sound of the front desk phone ringing down the hall. I didn't move. I just lay there, eyes wide open, already thinking about the courtroom, because I knew it was coming. This time, I wasn't walking in as the forgotten daughter. The moment we stepped through the courthouse doors, everything seemed to slow. Cameras didn't flash. They blinked quietly, always watching, waiting to catch someone off guard. Reporters whispered into their microphones. eyes moving from me to Linda, who walked beside me in slow, steady steps. She wore one of my old jackets, simple but warm, and it seemed to swallow her small frame. She didn't speak, but her straight posture said enough. We passed through the metal detectors. The hallway buzzed with quiet tension. A woman from the clerk's office led us into the courtroom. The judge was already seated. I felt Justin's eyes on me before I even saw him. He was dressed to impress, dark suit, crisp collar, silver tie pin. He looked calm, like he was the one bringing the case instead of defending himself. Jennifer sat beside him in a tailored coat, her phone gripped in manicured hands. Their faces were composed but tight. This wasn't a meeting. It was a battle. The judge began roll call and read the reason for the emergency hearing. My hands rested on the folder I'd brought, documents, emails, timestamps, and the video. My voice stayed steady when I presented the petition for legal guardianship and when I asked for a restraining order against both Justin and Jennifer. I submitted the video transcript and offered the full recording as evidence. The judge nodded now and then, flipping through the papers without a word. Her face gave nothing away. Then it was their turn. Justin stood slowly, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth, "we're very concerned about my mother's well-being. But these accusations come from long-standing family tension. My sister has been distant for years. She struggles with emotional control. This case is just resentment." Jennifer joined in, her tone sweet but sharp. "Barbara has always had problems with attention. We've tried to support Linda, but she's been confused, forgetful. We had to make hard choices." I didn't react. I just looked at the judge. She didn't look back. Then she turned quietly to Linda. "Mrs. Jerry," the judge said, "do you wish to speak?" Linda sat for a long time without answering. The room grew still. Even the reporters leaned forward, waiting. Finally, she stood. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't echo, but it cut through the air like glass. "I used to think pain meant love." She said that if someone yelled at you, it meant they still cared. That if they hit you, it meant they cared enough to stay. I don't believe that anymore. No one moved. Not even Justin. Linda looked straight at him, then sat back down. That was all. The judge cleared her throat and turned to me. "We'll meet again in 48 hours for a final decision. For now, Ms. Jerry will have temporary guardianship. The restraining orders are granted." Outside the courthouse, the air was crisp. The winter sun sat low behind the trees. Before I could step onto the sidewalk, Jennifer was there. "You just humiliated your family," she hissed. "That video, you edited it." I didn't raise my voice. "It's authenticated. I have copies and witnesses." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "You don't get to play saint. You abandoned her for years." "I left to survive," I said. "You stayed to control." She glared at me, but something in her eyes had changed, doubt. That night, my laptop froze mid-save. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Then a pop-up appeared, "File path not found." Another followed. And another. Everything was gone. I checked my backup drive, corrupted. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and logged into my cloud storage. It was still there. Thank God. By morning, the smear campaign had started. Anonymous posts on local forums accused me of exploiting my mother. Fake screenshots showed me moving money from her accounts. Photos of me with clients were twisted into lies. I expected this. I contacted a journalist I trusted, Samantha Morton, a reporter who had covered elder abuse before. We'd met at a health policy conference 4 years ago. I sent her a message. "You want a story? Here's what successful sons get away with." I uploaded a short clip of Linda's courtroom statement to a national advocacy site. No names. No explanation. Just her words. Within hours, comments poured in. "She sounds like my mom. I lived this. I thought I was the only one." The message was clear. We weren't alone. The silence that had protected them for decades was starting to break. The next day, sipping lukewarm coffee from the motel vending machine, I watched the notifications stack up. Then my phone buzzed with a headline, Justin Vaux to address abuse allegations in press conference. Today at noon. I smiled, calm and ready. I stood on the courthouse steps, phone in hand, coat zipped up to my throat. The wind pulled at my sleeves and bit my skin, but I barely felt it. My eyes stayed on the screen. Justin's press conference had just started. He looked polished and calm, wearing a navy suit with a pocket square that probably cost more than my rent. Jennifer stood a step behind him, lips painted a soft pink, her posture angled to look supportive without stealing attention. To most people, they probably looked like a united family.
To me, it was staged.
He began reading from a prepared statement. Of course, we're heartbroken by the false accusations that have surfaced, he said, hands folded neatly on the podium. Our family has always prioritized compassion and care for our mother. Compassion. The word almost made me laugh. He went on, spinning a story about family conflict, misunderstandings between generations, and mental decline. Then he said my name. Barbara has been estranged from our family for years. She's hurt. And sometimes hurt people lash out. It was classic damage control, make me look unstable, make himself look like the patient, burdened son. The audience would fill in the rest. Reporters nodded. Some took notes. A few looked doubtful, but no one interrupted. Not yet. I refreshed the live stream chat. The numbers were climbing, more viewers, more comments, more reactions. Then it happened. The screen glitched. A small banner slid across the bottom. New video uploaded. Anonymous. It wasn't from me. The press conference kept going, but the mood shifted. A few reporters glanced at their phones. One woman in the front row went pale and raised her hand. Mr. Jerry, she said, can you explain this audio recording that just surfaced? Justin blinked. I'm sorry. What audio? She didn't wait. She pressed play on her phone, holding it close to her mic. His voice filled the room. That old woman's a liability. Freeze her out if you have to.
Gasps.
Real ones. He froze for just a moment, then leaned toward the podium. That's clearly taken out of context. Another reporter jumped in. Mr. Jerry, is this your voice? He hesitated. That was all it took. Jennifer stepped back, her face going blank right there on camera. Just like that, their polished image cracked. The clip spread fast. Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. In minutes, the hashtag #FreezeHerOut was trending nationwide.
I didn't need to say a thing.
The truth was moving on its own. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras pushed forward. Justin tried to take control, blaming deepfakes, appealing to emotions, twisting the story, but it was too late. The phrase was already out there, louder than anything he could spin. Jennifer looked ready to run. She leaned toward him, not realizing her mic was still live. I told you that voicemail would surface. You never delete anything, Justin. He shot her a glare sharp enough to cut glass. I watched it all live from the courthouse steps, still wrapped in my old coat, still cold. But something had shifted. I hadn't leaked the clip. Someone else had. Someone who'd finally had enough. My phone rang minutes later. Samantha, the reporter I'd spoken to before. Did you leak this? She asked. I smiled. Nope. Well, it's everywhere.
Good.
Can I quote you? You can quote this. I didn't have to leak it. The truth runs on its own legs. That line spread almost as fast as the clip, headlines, memes, t-shirts. But it wasn't about attention. Community groups started tagging me in posts, advocacy pages, mental health forums, elder care networks. Messages poured in. You gave voice to what we all lived. Thank you for proving the silence wasn't our fault. Back at the motel, Linda watched the press conference from the edge of the bed. She didn't say much, just stared. When the audio played, she flinched, not in surprise, but like she was remembering every time she'd convinced herself it hadn't happened. He really said that, she whispered. I always thought I was imagining it. I sat beside her. She didn't look at me and I didn't push.
She reached for my hand.
That was enough. Later that night, while I typed a timeline for Samantha's follow-up story, my phone buzzed with a new number. I answered. You think this is over? The voice was low, distorted, but I knew who it was. "You're next." I didn't flinch. I didn't record it. I didn't trace the number. I just sent one message back. "Good. Then I know you're watching." Because this time, they weren't just watching me. They were watching the consequences. The lock turned under my hand. And for the first time in years, I opened the front door to my childhood home. Without hesitation, without apology, and without asking. I didn't knock. I didn't pause. I walked inside like the place was mine because for now, legally, it was. Linda wasn't with me. She stayed at the motel, bundled under blankets with Karen beside her, quietly drawing, crayons scattered across the bed. I'd handed the court the legal documents that morning. Now it was time to deliver them in person. The house was too quiet. Late morning light slipped through half-closed curtains, casting long shadows across the carpet. The air smelled of citrus cleaner, like someone had tried to scrub away the guilt. I stood just inside, letting the door shut behind me with a heavy thud. The sound seemed to travel through the walls. Justin appeared from the hallway, already tense. "You let yourself in?" he snapped. I didn't move. I didn't come to win. I came to end this. His jaw tightened, his eyes caught between disbelief and anger. "You think you've got leverage? This little show you're putting on isn't going to hold up. You've embarrassed this family enough." "This isn't about embarrassment," I said, stepping forward. "It's about accountability. Something you've avoided your entire life." He moved toward me, slower this time, but each step full of hostility. "You've always played the victim, Barbara. Ever since we were kids, you couldn't handle not being the favorite." That word hit something deep inside me, something I hadn't touched in years. "I wasn't the favorite because I didn't lie for you," I said. "I didn't shove girls on the playground and expect mom to fix it. I didn't push my little sister down the stairs and pretend it was an accident." His nostrils flared. "That's what this is about. Something that happened when we were 9. "No," I said louder now. "It's about the fact you've never taken responsibility."
Not then. Not now.
"You've turned mom into a puppet, Jennifer into your handler, and this house into a lie." Jennifer stepped out from the kitchen, phone in hand. "Is this a performance, Barbara? If it is, you might want to bring a camera crew next time."
No need, I said.
I brought something better. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. "This," I said, holding it out, "is a formal revocation of your power of attorney." I tapped the second document. "And this is a motion for permanent guardianship.
Court date is next Sunday."
I also filed for a protective order. "You are not to contact or go near Linda again." Justin scoffed. "Who do you think you are?" "I think I'm the person you should have stopped underestimating 11 years ago." A small sound made all of us turn. Soft footsteps on the stairs. Karen stood halfway down, clutching a drawing in her hand. Her eyes met mine, then moved to her parents. "I want to live with Aunt Barbara," she said softly. The room froze. Jennifer's smile faded. "Honey, let's not." "I don't want to stay here anymore," Karen said, her voice steady. "I'm tired." Jennifer stepped toward her, reaching out. "You don't mean that." "Yes, I do." Karen stepped back. I was shocked, but I stayed quiet. I let the moment happen. Justin's voice turned sharp. "This is manipulation." "No," I said. "This is clarity." He stepped toward me, pointing his finger. "You're going to regret this. You're turning her against her own father." "She's turning towards safety," I replied. "You don't get to control the story anymore." His composure cracked. "You ungrateful little." I raised my voice just enough. "You can scream, or you can leave." At that moment, 3 officers walked in through the front door, calm, professional. They had the order I'd filed earlier. One of them spoke to Justin. "Mr. Jerry, we need you to leave for a temporary separation period. You're not under arrest, but staying here would violate the protective order." "You've got to be kidding me," Justin muttered. Jennifer started protesting, trying to argue, but the officers barely looked at her. "Ma'am, step back," one of them said politely. Justin didn't fight. He didn't shout. He let himself be walked out, his face red with rage, but nowhere to put it. Jennifer stood in the middle of the room, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. I hope you're happy, she said. I'm not, I replied. But I'm not ashamed either. She didn't answer. That afternoon, once things calmed down, I walked through the living room. The quiet felt different now, less like hiding, more like healing. That's when I saw Linda. She came down the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing. She wore one of Dad's old sweaters I hadn't seen in years. In her other hand, she held a photo frame. Without a word, she placed it on the mantel. It was the old family photo from Easter Monday, the one they had once cropped me out of. This time it wasn't cropped. My face was there. The silence between us wasn't cold. It was real. And for the first time in my life, it didn't hurt. It was a Sunday morning when I came back to the house. Not the old one, the Jerry family home was now just a line in a case file. This was a quiet, single-story rental tucked behind an elementary school and a row of small, weathered shops. The snow from last week had mostly melted, leaving patches of brown grass and muddy sidewalks. I hadn't expected anything when I walked in. I wasn't looking for anything, but it was there, a plain envelope, folded in half, sitting on the kitchen table. No name on the front, no address. Just my mother's handwriting, the kind I hadn't seen in years. Slanted, looping, too neat to be casual. I sat down before opening it. I didn't want a grand apology. I didn't even know if I could handle one. I unfolded the paper slowly, as if it might crumble, even though it was clearly written that morning.
There's no fixing what I ruined, it read.
But you showed up. You didn't let me freeze twice. That's more than I deserve. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No signature. But somehow it was enough. I stared at the letter for a long time, then folded it along the crease and slipped it inside a paperback I'd never finished. The book was about women who disappeared, from photos, from memories, from history. I'd started it on a flight to Las Vegas 4 years ago and abandoned it halfway through. Now it seemed like the right place to leave her words, not forgotten, just kept. The days moved differently after that. Without press calls or court hearings, the world slowed to a pace I didn't realize I'd missed. I still worked remotely, consulting for elder care programs and helping nonprofits write policies that might protect someone next time. But most mornings, I sat by the window with coffee, watching school buses go by. Some days I wrote, but mostly I read. I answered emails from people I'd never met.
I saw your story, they began.
I was her once. Some wrote from hospital beds. Others from assisted living homes.
A few were daughters like me.
Some were sons who had watched their mothers shrink under the weight of sons like Justin. I didn't answer them all, but I read everyone. Linda changed too, not in some dramatic, movie-like way, but in small, steady shifts. She took her medication, every day. She asked fewer questions about things that weren't real. She stopped mentioning Justin. We didn't talk about him, not because we were avoiding it, but because we didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was respectful, like we were both learning to breathe in the same space without hurting each other. Dinner was simple most nights. Pasta, soup, sometimes a frozen casserole I overcooked or undercooked. Karen would draw at the table, her crayons coloring the corners of napkins. Linda would watch her, her face holding both regret and relief. She never said it, but I could see it. She was trying. Jennifer disappeared from public view. After the press conference disaster and the leaked audio, her real estate firm let her go. Her name was no longer listed on the community events she used to organize. Her social media accounts went quiet. Justin didn't face charges, not officially. Elder abuse cases are hard to prove. But he still lost. His clients walked away. His office door, once marked with gold letters, now belonged to someone else. An old classmate told me he'd left town. Maybe California. Maybe somewhere else. It didn't matter. Consequences come in many forms. Not all of them look like handcuffs. A week into March, the snow came back, light at first, then heavy overnight. I woke up early on Wednesday, pulled on my boots, and stepped into the backyard with Karen. She was still in her pajama pants, her jacket zipped tight, gloves on backwards. We knelt in the garden, the same spot that used to be full of weeds and broken branches. I handed her a handful of daffodil bulbs. They looked dead. she said, poking one with her mitten. They're not, I told her. They just need time. And the right place to come back. She dug a shallow hole and placed the bulb inside, like it was something important. Will they come back? She asked. If we care for them, I said.
Yes.
Even the frozen ones. She nodded and covered the bulb gently, patting the soil like it was a blanket. We planted 3 rows. The sky above was soft, with slow, low clouds that looked tired too. Back inside, Linda was standing by the window, holding a mug. She didn't say anything, just watched us. Later that night, after Karen was asleep and the house was quiet, I sat on the couch. The letter from my mother was still tucked inside that unfinished book on the shelf. I thought about what had been taken, the years, the warmth, the names erased and replaced. But I also thought about what we had planted. Some families are built on names. Some are built on healing. I didn't get a perfect ending, but I got peace. And that's enough. And this time, when the snow came, it didn't hurt.
It softened.
Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones buried inside our own family. I hadn't set out to punish. I had set out to protect. And in doing that, I learned something important. Not all blood is love, and not all silence is peace.